Hello, and welcome to Joline Knits a Lot. This is my show about knitting and crafting and all the other things I'm getting up to these days. How are you? It's February, and I am actually taking part in something called the February Challenge on Instagram. I'm going to put that right here because it is very difficult to say this word. February. It's a challenge where you post a picture every day of February. There are a series of prompts, and the idea, I think, is just to get to know other makers better. So day one was hello, it's me, as sort of introduction post, and then other posts have been things like what am I looking forward to, what are some things I made last year. I think today's is Olympic cast on. Spoiler alert, I'm not doing an Olympic cast on, but I'll talk about that later. How are you? How have you been? I have finished a few things since we last spoke. One of those things is this sweater right here. It is the striped sweater by Andrea Mowry. And as you can see, my short arms are completely covered. Ta-da! I did it. Okay, well, that one was a little bit deceptive. I'm really happy with this project. I'm happy with the length that my sweater turned out. I'll hopefully post some pictures here of my finished project. I have quite a bit of yarn left over. In fact, for a lot of the stripes, I have over half a ball left of the Recollect by Farmer's Daughter. That's a sport weight Rambouillet yarn. And each ball is 57 grams. This is how many yards. I can't remember how many yards off the top of my head. So I used about half for most of them. Some of the stripes I used a little bit more of because they got more action, particularly not in the arms so much because these stripes really don't take up as much yarn, but further down the body, any of the stripes that I had to do more than one of used maybe 3/4 of a ball of yarn, particularly these two colors, because they land kind of at the end of the body section. I made a couple of alterations, adaptations, changes to the pattern that I thought I would tell you about. My bust size is about a 40 when I measure it, and I wanted about 2 to 3 inches, maybe 2 to 4 inches of positive ease, but that wasn't an option in the sizing for me. I believe the sizes of this pattern, I'm just looking to see if I have the pattern lying around. I believe my options were a 42 inch or a 46 inch. So I went a different route. I started out knitting the 46 inch size at the top here, and I did that until I got to the point where you bind off this, well, you put the sleeves on hold and knit the body. So at that point, I put a recommended number of sleeves on hold, and I cast on fewer stitches in the armpit here than was recommended for the size. And so instead of 16 stitches that I was supposed to put on hold or cast on, for my underarm right here, when you start the body again, I did 8. So I lost 8 stitches here and I lost 8 stitches here, and the combination of those two 8 stitches or 16 stitches meant that the chest size of this sweater was reduced by about 3 inches. And that was actually a really easy way for me to change the bust size of this sweater without having to do major alterations elsewhere. Worked really well. It fits me really well. I have a fair amount of ease, as you can see. It's a fairly loose fitting sweater, and I do have a t-shirt underneath that it's kind of clinging to a little bit. But I'm really happy with how that turned out. You can find, there's bits of fuzz flying in front of my face. You can find notes on my project on my Ravelry page. My Ravelry ID is Joline, Joline. So I made notes of all of these things on my Ravelry page, so you can go have a look if you like. The other change I made was to use a slightly larger needle for these sleeves. Andrea Mowry has pointed out, and rightly so I think, that a lot of people knit at a slightly tighter gauge on a smaller circumference than they do on the larger circumference, like the body or the yoke section of the sweater. And so she recommends going up a needle size, and I did that too. So I guess that's not really an adaptation, but maybe just something interesting that you may want to try on your sweaters. So the body of the sweater is knit on a 3.75 millimeter needle, and I knit the sleeves on a 4 millimeter needle. I like to use a 12-inch circular for my sleeves. I just find it super convenient because I can just knit round and round and round. And the only other tip I would have for you if you were knitting this sweater is to weave in the ends as you go, because there are a lot of ends. So what I would do is every maybe 3 or 4 stripes, I would pick up, before I started knitting, I would pick up my knitting and weave in all of the ends. I like to leave the ends just dangling, as it were, until I've blocked the sweater, and then I trim them all up. I just trimmed up all the ends this morning and there was quite a pile. But I recommend you doing that too, because when you block your knitting, it sort of sets the yarn in place. And so all of those little ends that you've woven in after they've been blocked will really want to stay there and are less likely to wiggle out. I also like to leave a bit of a tail. Let me see if I can find some examples. Can you see right there? I've left a little bit of yarn every time I've cut them off. I don't cut it right off to the knitting. No one's going to see that on the inside, and with a little bit of room left, that tail is way less likely to weave itself out. And so yeah, I've completed the striped sweater. I'm really happy with it. I think I'm going to wear it a fair amount. The yarn is lovely once it's been blocked. It is soft. It's warm without being heavy. So I totally recommend the yarn and the pattern if you're looking for a new sweater to knit. Some people have knit this in just 2 colors, and some people have knit this in 1 color as a great just kind of staple sweater, and I think that's a great idea too. If you've been watching other episodes, you know that I have another one of these planned for somebody else in my life, so you'll probably see this pattern again in a very different color palette. And that's my striped sweater. I have a couple more finished objects. The first one is a pair of mittens. That should probably be no surprise to you, since these were, I had 1 mitten completed and 1 half done. This is the Evia mitten pattern by Skein Knits. It's a great Norwegian mitten pattern. Sorry, should I say sweater? Mittens. The Evia Mittens by Skein Knits. And it's a wonderful pattern. I knit these socks. They're still mittens. I knit these mittens using some Ancient Arts yarn. It's called the Lasco wool. That's the brown, kind of plummy brown color. And then the cream is a DK yarn from Poppy Fibers in the Silk Stockings colorway, I think. And it's the Robson DK. So the cream is a superwash yarn, and the brown is not a superwash. But I think, have a fair amount of success with my color work. I did have a couple of false starts, and I had to figure out what size needle I needed to use with this yarn, and also remind myself to be a little bit loose with my color work so that I wasn't getting puckering or anything. But in the end, I'm quite happy with how these turned out. They have a great palm. Here is the main side. I will tell you one thing about this pattern in the way that I knitted it. I flipped the dark and the light colors. So on the pattern, and particularly the chart, anything that is cream on my mitten was a dark square, and anything that was the brown was a light square. I don't know if I 100% recommend that for beginner knitters. It's a little confusing. It was confusing for me at times until I really got into the rhythm of it. But I'm really happy with how they turned out. I think I did a pretty good job of my thumb pickups. And I really love these thumbs, but they're the darker color. So yeah, these are the Evia mitts by Skein Deer. I recommend them for beginner colorwork knitters and also for experienced colorwork knitters as a lovely amuse-bouche between projects. So that's fun. And I have one other finished project that I have to reach for. Give me a second. I have one other finished object, and this is the February dishcloth in the Year of Dishcloths. This is a sort of newsletter subscription put out by the Kitchen Sink Shop. She has a year of dishcloth patterns that come out very early in the month. Each one takes less than a ball of sort of crafter's cotton. This time I used Estelle Suds, which I've never used before, but it was great, and I still have a little nugget left over. I was sort of thinking it might be fun to take all the little nuggets of yarn that I have left over and make some striped dishcloths with all the colors that I've used, because I will have some leftovers. But this is the February dishcloth. It's kind of blowing out a little bit. As you can see, there we go. There are some hearts that are done in purl stitches on a stocking stitch background, and then some little lacy panels. And that's it. The pattern is called Home is Best, and this pattern is free for this year. I believe that she leaves her patterns free for that year, and then in 2023 she will put these ones up for sale in the same way that she did for the patterns from 2021. Those are now available, but for a small fee. But this year, all of these patterns are free. So every month you get a new pattern that you can work up and set aside. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to just have a nice stack of dishcloths by the time December rolls around. I stocked up on some dishcloth cotton at my local yarn store, the Fiber Nook. They had, perhaps not coincidentally, just posted that they had a big shipment of Estelle Suds. They had all the colors in, and so I popped by one Saturday and stocked up. So now I have enough dishcloth cotton to get me through this year of dishcloths. And as I said, every ball, there's a small amount left over. So I'm looking for some things to do with that. I think it might be, as I said, it might be fun to do a stripey one, so it has all the colors of the year that I use. And then if there's some left over, I might try and make some other small projects. The one thing I've been looking at are these face, I think they call them scrubbies. It's a small, usually crocheted pattern. Stepping out of my comfort zone. And the idea is that they would replace the cotton pads that are often used and then are single use, so they're thrown out. So you could make a bunch of these little ones and then just wash them and reuse them. So I'm thinking I might try and make some of those as well if I'm feeling brave with my crochet. We'll see. So that's another finished object that is fun. And that is all my finished objects this week, which is pretty good. That's 3. I have also 3 things that I've been working on. So let's start with the oldest project. As I talked to you last time, I've been having a hard time figuring out what it is I want to work on lately. I have been lacking inspiration. And so in an effort to craft my way through this doldrums, is that what we're going to call them? I picked up my good old Granny Stripe Blanket, and I thought this was sort of funny because it seems that I like to crochet in January. I started my very first crochet blanket in, I think, January of 2017. It took me a number of years to finish it because I crocheted for a while and then it got put away. And that may happen this time too, but I started this crochet blanket last year and I just picked it up again in January. So January apparently is made for crochet. But I'll just show you how much I have been working on this sort of month. This, I have a little progress keeper here. It's a little teacup, if you can see that. Oh, tiny little teacup. My nails are chipped. My 13-year-old daughter decided she was bored one day and wanted to paint my nails. I don't often have painted nails because I use my hands so much that it never lasts, but it gave her something to do for a while, and we both agreed that they looked nice, but they're chipping. Anyway, I started where that little teacup is, and I got actually a fair amount done. I'm just working off of some magic knot balls that I made apparently last year sometime. Let me show you what I have. This is the one I'm working off of right now. And if you're interested in what a magic knot is, it is a way of securing yarn that is, you tie two knots. There are great tutorials. In fact, I'll link one in the show notes below. You make two knots, you slide those two knots together, and then you're able to cut the ends off quite close to the knots and they won't come undone. Now I can actually testify to this because my original crochet blanket that I made years ago sees a lot of love, like nearly daily use. And I used magic knots in that, and I decided I needed to wash it. But how do you wash a big crochet blanket? So I thought, I'm just gonna be brave and put it in my washer. So I put it in my washing machine on a delicate cycle, I believe. I put a very little bit of laundry detergent in, and I just let it run. And it washed up really nicely. The fabric softened up nicely. And then I just draped it over a stair rail to dry. And in a couple hours, it was just fine. And all of my knots held. So I thought that was a great testament to the fact that at least at one point, I knew how to make a magic knot that worked. So I'm just working with that. And I saw another crafter who talked about having scrappy Sundays. So on Sundays, they worked on scrappy projects. And I thought, well, Sunday might be a good day to work on a blanket. So I'm just sort of leaving this crochet blanket out and about so that I can pick it up if I don't really want to work on anything else. It doesn't take much effort. I know what I'm doing. I do have to watch what I'm doing with crochet because I'm not as experienced with it. But it's certainly a very relaxing thing to do, and it makes a nice change from knitting. Who would have thought? Anyway, I'll just give you a quick rundown of how I'm doing so far. So I've knit, or crocheted this much in the last little while, which I thought was pretty good progress. And this is just, I'm just using crazy colors. It's just kind of wacky, just odds and ends. And it is what it is. But I have to say the first one that I made is also equally wacky, and it's very cozy, and I enjoy using it. So I'm just going to work on this until it's done. My goal is to make a square blanket, and occasionally I'll just measure it to see how I'm doing. And so to measure my progress, which obviously I'm nowhere near being done, but I'll take the corner and I'll just fold it up like a right angle triangle, like this. So that's how much I've done. And this is how many rows I have left to go. So I'm not quite halfway, but any progress is good. And I'm not in a rush to get it done. So that's my crochet project. It lives in a bag that a friend of mine made me. It's just a tote bag with some beautiful toile fabric. And I've got my crochet hook in there. I've got some extra magic balls, as you can see. I'm not sure how I'm going to work black in. I need to find some sort of transitional yarn that will blend in the black, but maybe that one. I don't know. We'll see. And then I also have some emergency chocolate bars. I often keep tiny emergency chocolate bars in my knitting bags because why not? And when else do you need an emergency chocolate bar than when you're in the midst of a knitting crisis? That is my crochet blanket. So 2 other things on the needles. One is a pair of socks. This is a kit that I got for my birthday in January from a dear friend. And I have been working on these sort of off and on the last couple weeks. I have finished one sock, which I will show to you now. these are the, this is a Leo and Roxy work sock kit, which comes with a pattern for a work sock. They have this great marled yarn that you can buy. And then you get a white 20-gram mini and then a 10-gram mini available in a number of different colors. This is called teal. I can't remember. This is what it's called right here. And this is the teal work sock, as you can see. Now it's kind of hard to tell, but this is actually a 3x1 rib. So it does, you do really get that work sock feel, I think. Oh, for goodness sake. I hope you can see that ribbing nicely. It has an eye of partridge heel, which is kind of fun. And yeah, I'm really enjoying working on these. The only thing I've learned about myself is that I don't love knitting 3x1 rib, it turns out. I don't know if 2x2 rib's any better, but I'm less likely to make a mistake with a 2x2 rib than I am with a 3x1 rib. Anyway, I have made some progress on the second sock. It looks like this. So slowly but surely. I'm really gonna like wearing these, and I'm gonna try really hard to not let my kids steal them, because I really enjoy these. But I'm fairly confident I will have enough of the marled yarn to make at least one more pair of socks. And I have plenty of the teal. So the question is, will I have enough of the white or the cream yarn? And if I don't, this is how much I have left. I still have to knit a heel and a toe. If I don't have enough of this yarn for another sock, that's fine. I can get another cream colored sock yarn. Oops. But this is all from a brand called Leo and Roxy. I believe they are located in Ontario, Canada. And if you're interested, they also, not only do they dye lovely yarns in different weights, not just sock, but they also dye floss for embroidery and cross stitch. So that might be on another, I know Leo and Roxy they have a yarn website, and they possibly have a different website for their floss, but it's really beautiful hand-dyed floss for embroidery. Now, keep in mind that often when you buy embroidery floss, it's like less than $1 a skein. Obviously, this is hand-dyed and beautiful stuff, so it's going to be a little bit more expensive because more effort is put into it, and it's an individual's business. So just keep that in mind if you're having a look on their website. So that's my socks, and I have one last project on the needles. Now, I mentioned to you before, one of the prompts in February, it's a really hard word, is an Olympic cast on. And the Winter Olympics are actually just starting. And I do enjoy watching many Winter Olympic events. I like watching curling. I like watching, speed skating's fun. Snowboarding. Most people in Canada become experts in figure skating when there's figure skating on TV. I do like watching hockey. So I will be watching some of the Olympic events, but I have to admit that the Beijing Olympics haven't really caught my attention the way that other Olympic events have. And I think partly that's because of the uncertainty. So having said all of that, I haven't really put a lot of thought into Olympics, and often I will do an Olympic cast on, but this year I kind of hadn't even crossed my mind. And I think it was a combination of the uncertainty of the games, the uncertain political climate, and also just my lack of inspiration. Anyway, I went to, as I told you last time, I was going to go to my local yarn store, and I did. I found some beautiful yarn, and I found a beautiful pattern to knit with that yarn. Of course, consulting with many people, consulting with the friend I was shopping with, consulting with my good friend who was not with me then, but texting back pattern options, etc. And then the lovely people at the shop who helped me select this yarn. So I went to Fiber Nook a couple weeks ago now, and I came home with some beautiful sport weight yarn. I'll show you the skein I haven't used yet. That's all wound up. This is called, this is by Walcott Yarns. oh dear, I'm all tangled up. Walcott yarns, and the yarn base is called Opus. This is a wool and alpaca blend. So it's got a really soft sheen and a beautiful drape. It is a sport weight yarn, which means there are about 300 and some yards in a 100-gram cake. I'm doing terrible podcasting, let me tell you. I'll show you the label and I'll give you more details. So yes, this is Walcott Yarns Opus. That's what the label looks like. I purchased mine at the Fiber Nook, but I'm sure this is available in many other fine yarn establishments. It is 70% Argentinian merino, 30% baby alpaca, 100% awesome. It is 350 meters, 385 yards in 100 grams. So it's a lot like a heavy fingering yarn. It suggests to use 3 to 4 millimeter needles. I'm using 4 millimeter needles, and I am using the ink color. So here is what it looks like in the cake. As you can see, it does have a nice shine to it, doesn't it? And I have decided to knit up the, I'm gonna look up the name of the pattern so I don't mess this up. It's the Tsubaki pullover, and I will put that here. And this is a pattern by Hiroko Fukatsu. She's a new designer to me. I'm not really familiar with a lot of her patterns, but I have to say this pattern is incredibly well written and it's very clever. You knit the sweater from the top down. It has saddle shoulders, which means there's a stockinette portion across the shoulder, and then stitches are knit down from that. That stockinette sort of column then grows into the sleeve stitches, and this is all knit in one piece. So you cast on the collar, you knit your way down to the armpits, and then you knit one sleeve back and forth, and then stitches are picked up on either side of the sleeve, and there is a really interesting bind off technique which allows you to bind off the inseam, I guess, of the sleeve without ever breaking the yarn. It's incredible. And then you pick up, and then you continue knitting to the other sleeve, knit that one back and forth, pick up the stitches and work the interesting seam up the other arm, and then you knit the body straight down. It is so clever. I can't even begin to tell you how impressed I am with this designer's ability to write a clear pattern with really interesting construction techniques. So here is what I have so far. This is the front is cabled. As you can see, there's like these big kind of, I want to say juicy, is that the wrong word? Big juicy cables, 3 of them down the front, and then some little cables in between. Here is that column of stitches that I was telling you about, that is referred to as a saddle shoulder. So as you can see, there's this column here, and then the sleeve is growing out of that column. The back and the sleeves are stockinette. Here's the back. Nope, that's not the back. That's the back. So it's just all stockinette. Then you come around, there's the other saddle shoulder, as you can see there. And then those beautiful juicy cables in the front again. These cables are a little bit tricky because they're quite a number. They're a larger cable than is often worked. So it's 8 stitches over 8 stitches, which is quite a few to be moving back and forth. Often when I knit cables, I don't use a cable needle, but for these many stitches to be passing over and under, I am. And in fact, I thought I had a cable needle somewhere in my life, but I couldn't find it. So I just picked up a DPN in a size, this is a size 3.25, and I'm knitting the sweater on 4 millimeter needles. So I'm using a bamboo needle, which is going to be kind of grippy, on a smaller size so that I can get the stitches on and off fairly easily, and this is working really well for my big cables. Yeah, I'm just loving this. I think that the yarn is showing up the cables really nicely, and it's just so soft and a beautiful drape. So I'm really looking forward to how this sweater is going to turn out. My only concern is that it may pill, because merino and alpaca are both kind of, softer yarns, and so they may be prone to pilling. I will let you know. Anyway, so while I don't have an Olympic cast on, I do have a sweater that I plan on working while watching Olympic events. And that's as good as it's gonna get. How about you? Are you knitting anything for the Olympic cast on? Are you partaking in that? Or are you just like me, happily knitting on your own project while watching Winter Olympic events and cheering for your country? I do love an underdog story. So I'm a sucker for, you know, that athlete who's been through a lot of hardship, and I just want them to do really well. So I'll be cheering for Canada, but I'll also be cheering for any underdog pretty much. Please have a look at the February challenge. So hard to say. It's really interesting, and I like to see what other people are posting. Every day's prompt is sort of a loose guide, and so there's nothing like super strict about it. It's just the idea is to get people, I guess, sharing ideas about knitting and sharing what they're working on and sharing more about themselves. So I partook in this last year, and I'm doing it again, and it's lots of fun. So every day I have to come up with sort of my interpretation of that prompt. So if you like, you can either follow me on Instagram or follow the hashtag February challenge, and you'll see what a lot of different crafters are working on. And that's part of what's great about these challenges, is learning and meeting other knitters, which I'm sort of looking forward to as well. That's really all I have to share with you today. Thanks so much for stopping in. It's a little bit cold here today, but the weatherman promises it will warm up. And my poor dog really does need to go on some longer walks. We've had some cold weather and he's getting a little stir crazy. So I'm looking forward to some longer walks with my dog and to some Olympic knitting. I'd like to thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope that you find something to work on in the next couple of weeks while enjoying some Olympic events. And if you're not an Olympic fan, then I hope you find some crafts that keep you warm and make you happy. I hope that in the next couple of weeks you find time to do the things that you like to do. I know I plan on knitting a lot. See you soon. Bye-bye.